Welcome to the Private Practice Journeys podcast, where mental health professionals learn about the nuts and bolts of private practice by listening to the journeys of 4 therapists that have taken the plunge into private practice. And here's your host, Chris Quarto.
Hey everyone, this is Chris Quarto. Welcome back to Private Practice Journeys. Hey, thanks if you've been listening to this podcast series over the past many months. And for those of you who are listening for the first time, welcome. I think that you'll really like this series. But anybody who listens to this, I think we're all in the same boat, either now or we have been in the same boat of wanting to go into private practice, but not really sure how to do this private practice thing. And just having questions and sometimes just kind of feeling lost. But you know what? With a podcast series like this, with 4 therapists who are actually doing this, who have actually launched their practices and are putting all this into action, you can learn from them. And I even learn new things. I've been in private practice for many years, but I continue to learn new things from these 4 therapists. And it's just an amazing podcast, and I really appreciate them being part of this too. So Amanda Petrik is back with us today. She has some great news to share at the very beginning of this podcast episode. So without further ado, here's Amanda. Hey, welcome back everybody to Private Practice Journeys. And today I am joined once again by Amanda Petrik. And Amanda, thanks so much for joining us again.
Hello, thanks for having me back.
Yeah. Well, something very exciting has happened, I hear. And why don't you tell the Journey followers about what's happening in your life?
Oh, thank you. Actually, just last week, I put out a book, my first book, called Worry Reframes. I'm kind of excited.
Ooh, all right. Well, why don't you tell us about it?
Oh, well, so as I've mentioned in previous podcasts, I come from a very cognitive behavioral theoretical perspective. I do a lot of cognitive restructuring.
Yeah.
So I do that with clients in session, but I know a lot of times as soon as they're out of the office or I'm gone, it's almost like it's out the window.
Yes.
And they struggle doing that. So I was trying to find a way to kind of write this technique into a book, or when they're having those negative thoughts in the moment,
Yep.
how I am still almost in the back of their head, or they're in the book. And so it's hundreds of worries right there in the book. Like, what if I get fired tomorrow? Is my friend mad at me? Like, all these worries literally written out.
Yep.
And reframes right there, different ways to think about it. Like, hey, maybe today will go just fine, or maybe it's not the best of days, but I can manage that. Like actual reframes, like what we would work on in session, and they're written out right there.
That's great. So you just came out with this, and how can people get a hold of it? Is this for clients or for therapists or both? Or
I was intending it to be for clients, but I've had some therapists already buy it to learn about the technique more, or so that they could recommend and refer it to their clients, which was so sweet of them.
Okay.
To find it, it's on Amazon.
All right.
If you just search for Worry Reframes, or I have the link on my website as well.
Okay, and we'll put that in the show notes too, so if anybody wants to get a hold of that, they'll be able to just click on that link and go directly to it. So, well, congratulations on that. I know that must have been a big effort on your part to do something like that, and so it's really neat to see that come to fruition, isn't it?
It is, and thank you for your support.
Oh, sure. Well, listen, there are a few things I wanted to cover with you today that I've covered with Lisa last week, and some of these things I think are very important, especially our first topic for today, Amanda, and that is learning about systems. And I think you'd probably agree that as a private practitioner, you have to have systems in place in order to make a go of your practice. And systems could be a lot of different things, electronic health record system, how you email clients, telephone, anything really. It goes beyond that. And we have to have these in place. And it's not the easiest thing to learn about when you first go into practice, and sometimes I think private practitioners are taken by surprise and they're kind of at a loss of what to do until they get these systems in place. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what you've learned since you've been in practice about setting up systems and what's worked best for you.
Yeah, when I started, I don't think I really had any systems in place other than, I had like Word documents, Excel spreadsheets to track everything.
Uh-huh.
And I wonder if a lot of people do that in the beginning. And it wasn't until I went full time that I finally decided I need to invest in something that would make my life so much easier.
Okay.
And so I did a lot of research into what it is that I'm needing, not only for my note templates, for scheduling, for tracking expenses.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you have to do a lot of thinking into what it is that you're needing for your practice. And my biggest piece of advice, because I've said this to so many people, is like, invest in that from the get-go.
Okay.
Like, I think I'm spending $49 a month for my system, and I could have done that. I could have purchased that from the very beginning because it has saved me so much time and even money, actually, like, from having to track down clients for payments, because it helps me collect payments from clients.
All right.
And the number of things that my system, my electronic health record that I use, that does all of it, I wish that I would have done that, invested in that from the get-go, instead of thinking, oh, that's something I will do much later down the road.
Well, let me ask you a couple questions about that, Amanda. First, which system did you decide to go with?
I went with Simple Practice after looking at all of the different EHRs out there and what they all have available to them. That's the one I was happiest with.
And then I guess a follow-up question to that, how did you know that it was time to go the electronic health record system route as part of your system, getting your system in place? How did you know that, okay, it's time to do this, I really need to do this? What made you decide to do it?
I think, well, one, when I was going full-time, and my first thought was, okay, I finally have enough clients, I'm going to make enough money to afford this. But thinking back now, I could have afforded it from the beginning.
Uh-huh.
But then the big piece was I was spending more time writing the notes in a Word template and locking it, or in my Excel spreadsheets, or creating invoices. I was spending way too much time on all these other made-up systems I tried to create.
All right.
I look back now on how much time I had wasted.
Yeah.
That I don't have to do now.
I think a lot of people start off just trying to bootstrap it and, just to try to keep expenses low. But on the other hand, you kind of have to look at, well, what kind of time am I investing in all of this stuff that I'm trying to bootstrap? And if I used an electronic health record system, I wouldn't have to be spending so much time. And so it really just kind of equals out in the end.
Yeah, you can see an extra client with that amount of time that I'm creating an invoice in a Word document versus this automatically populates and sends it straight out to their client portal. It's amazing.
That's right. So it sounds like what you would recommend is from the get-go, people give serious consideration to an electronic health record system. And you're right, there are a lot out there, Simple Practice, Theranest, and the list goes on. And it sounds like you did a lot of research about Simple Practice. And why is it that you decided to go with that particular one?
So a big thing that I liked was their client portal. So you can so let's just say a client calls me to schedule their consultation. I can then send them all of their paperwork, the policies, the demographic information through the client portal. They fill out everything and sign everything before they ever come in. They fill out their credit card information. They fill out their insurance information before they ever come in. We don't do any of that in the first session. We literally, our whole consultation is spent on the consultation, why they're here. No paper forms. It's fabulous. I get to send invoices to their client portal, so I never have to mail out invoices, and they pay through their client portal, so I'm never chasing down money. Everything is paid.
So they pay themselves with a credit card, or do you have them authorize your, just kind of taking that as a debit out of their credit card? How do you do that?
Yeah, and mine are kind of half and half. So I have in my policy that they keep a credit card on file and that they can go in and pay, but if after 30 days they haven't paid their balance, it'll automatically be charged.
Okay.
Because some people need like an extra week until their paycheck to pay that balance.
Right.
But I have in there after 30 days, if they still haven't done it, it's going to get charged, and they sign off on that.
Have you ever, I'm just kind of curious about that, Amanda. Have you ever gotten any pushback by clients about that policy? About I don't want to give you my credit card information. Have you ever gotten that, and how do you deal with that?
I haven't gotten like actual pushback. I've had people just not fill out the credit card information portion, and then when they come in, I explain, "Oh, I see that you didn't fill this out. I'll need this number," and then they do it.
All right.
No problem.
Okay.
And then I've gotten a few times where, and I give plenty of notice saying, "Now remember, in 15 more days, this will be charged. Now remember, tomorrow this will be charged." And then when it's charged, you're like, "Oh, what is this? What is this charge?" As if they haven't received a ton of phone calls and emails. but then when I charge it and I explain, "Oh, remember you had this balance, remember this policy," and everyone has been okay.
Are
so
any of those?
It's just a lot. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think as long as you have that conversation and remind them and talk about the policy when they come in, so far it has been okay.
Yeah, just really, I guess, as part of the whole informed consent process, I guess that could be part of that conversation. And you had mentioned maybe sending them email reminders. I'm wondering, as part of the system, if you could set that up as an automated type of thing where you would send them reminders, or do you have to actually go in there yourself and send the email to them about payment or something like that?
Good question. I still do. I kind of go back and forth, and I'll do a phone call reminder, and then I'll do an email reminder because I want to make sure they do get it. And I haven't found a way for it to automatically do that because I have had clients say, "Oh, I didn't get that email. I didn't know that charge was coming," and they were fine with it once they knew.
Okay.
But I still go in and automatically do that. I just see that, oh, this is about to be 30 days, and I'll do that myself and call and leave a voicemail. But so far, like you said, no pushback. I think as long as they're aware.
Right. Yeah. Make everything up front. Yeah, that's very good. Well, Amanda, let me ask you a little bit about our next topic, which is personal branding. And, this is something that I don't think a lot of people think about when they first go into private practice is, they are the product in a sense, and they kind of have to sell themselves. But I wonder if for you, in this journey of yours throughout this year, what you've learned about branding yourself and making yourself known, for who you are, in the types of services that you provide in the community. What have you learned along the personal branding line?
And it's interesting that you said for your product, because that's exactly what I was thinking about. Is I had to start thinking of myself as a product, as a service. What am I trying to sell? As opposed to I just lost you.
Go ahead. I just lost you for a sec. Go ahead and repeat what you said.
Oh, that's okay. That I'm a product, that I'm a service, that I'm trying to sell. And so when I am trying to market that, I always make sure everything I put out there is very intentional.
Okay.
Like, what exactly who am I trying to reach? What is my goal? What am I trying to get out of this? Because I would say at the very beginning, those were probably my missteps, is I was just posting an article on my Facebook just because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. And now every step I take, I try to think about, what is my goal here? Am I trying to post this article because that is going to target this audience and it's going to connect with them to think about, wow, she gets what I'm feeling. I'm going to call her.
What made you decide to shift, to make that change? Because you didn't start off that way, but now you sound like you sound like you're a big believer in this branding thing. So what made you decide to make that shift?
I think it was because I wasn't getting a response or reaction from when I just post it to post.
All right.
And now, and I still make mistakes, not necessarily mistakes, but don't get the response I want from some of my branding.
Mm-hmm.
But I try to think about what is the purpose behind every step I take, whether it's networking or whether it's a quote that I put out there.
Mm-hmm.
Because every step I just try to think about has to be intentional. What am I trying to get out of this?
Mm-hmm.
Because each one of those things could bring in a client or it might not.
Yeah, it's almost like you're trying, and I like that word intentional. I think that that's a really good way of framing this. And it's almost as if you're trying to create an impression of some sort regarding you, your product, your service. And so people know you for that, and they'll remember you for that. And so there's a lot that goes along with that. And I think that being consistent, and I think that you and I have talked about in the past about, what's your niche and kind of narrowing down so it's easier for people to remember you and your brand.
Yes, I think that has really helped with the branding. Is hopefully people start associating whether it's my name, my picture, my website with that niche, and that will also help whether it's get towards my goal, my product, my target audience. So I think that really helped along throughout the year.
So if a Journey follower is listening to you right now, Amanda, and thinking, where do I start with all this branding stuff? What would you recommend to them? They haven't gone into private practice yet. They're thinking about it, and they're listening to you talk about branding. It kind of sounds interesting to them, but where would you recommend that they start along these lines?
You know what? I know this probably seems like a few steps back, but I don't know if a lot of people do this. And I'm pulling it up like right now as we speak, as I created that business plan.
All right.
And I'm sure to somebody that actually majored in business, they would laugh at it because I just created a Google document. I don't know what a business plan actually looks like.
Uh-huh.
But I created a business plan, and it starts with clients I will serve. What does that look like?
Okay.
How I look different, like what does my competition look like and how I'm going to be different.
Okay.
How I'm going to market. And so that really helped me solidify what my goal is. So that every time I put myself out there, I'm working towards all those goals on my business plan.
It really gets you to think, doesn't it? I mean, when you put things in black and white like that, it really gets you to think about all this stuff.
It does, because I don't want to I wish I had time to do everything, but I don't want to just do anything and everything if it's not trying to meet these things on my plan.
Mm-hmm. That makes total sense. Okay. So coming up with a business plan, answering some of these questions, who's my ideal client? How do I serve them? Trying to kind of narrow things down and I guess also that kind of goes along with that, trying to narrow things down and trying to convince yourself that it's okay to do that because, the whole scarcity mindset can come and kind of prevent you from doing that. But I think that I know, a lot of people know that the more that you niche, the more that you narrow down, actually, the more that's going to help you in the long run.
Exactly. And so I think that kind of leads on to your next topic is that mindset.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about keeping things
in. Good segue there.
Yeah, that's a great segue. Keeping things in perspective, and there's a lot of things that I think we have to try to keep in mind about ourselves as private practitioners. We kind of go into this journey not quite knowing exactly how it's going to work, and some things don't work well, some things work really well, but what kind of perspective do you think that a private practitioner has to keep in mind about themselves as they're going along in this journey?
I noticed the two big ones that kind of keep me going every day is and we've talked about this before, is the abundance versus scarcity mindset.
Okay.
And then the second one is that I am a business.
Okay.
Which is really hard to get. I mean, I have no business training. I have no marketing, background.
Right.
But that I have to think of myself daily as a business, which can be, I think, really difficult in our field of therapists and healers because they don't want to think of ourselves that we're trying to make money.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think that I think that when we go in our training, and I think it might be actually more characteristic of certain fields than others. Like I think social work in particular has a very strong social justice orientation. Not that other fields don't, but they do. I mean, that's been characteristic of their field for a long time. And I've talked to people that I know who are social workers. Even Lisa, one of the therapists on our podcast series, has the social work background, and that's very true of them. And so when it comes time to looking at private practice, it's they feel conflicted because on the one hand, this is how they've been trained. Like, you should go out there and try to help people and not worry about the financial aspect. But on the other hand, how do you operate a business unless you do start to focus on money matters and branding and everything that we just got done talking about?
Exactly. And I've noticed that when I have conversations or in group forums that I'm discussing, whether it's something simple like a no-show fee, how, I'm going to charge that client, I might get scoffed at, how that's not okay. And I'm like, I'm a business and that's my time and it's valuable.
Right. Yeah. And what would a flower shop do, or, what would other businesses do if they weren't paid? I mean, it's just not
exactly.
They're not going to write it off. I mean, they're going to try to get that if they can, especially if there are large amounts of money involved. And sometimes in our field, if you're talking about people who haven't paid for a number of sessions, that can really add up. So, okay, so that really. So say a little bit more about the whole notion of abundance and the scarcity mindset.
So I'm trying to think about when I finally really took grasp of that, because I will admit when I first went full time, I was still that one. When a referral came in, I was like, I had to take every single call. Mm-hmm. But then quickly, my caseload was like that of a community mental health center, where I was going to get burnt out. These weren't my ideal clients. And then at some point, it clicked that there are enough clients out there for everybody. Mm-hmm. And that, go ahead.
No, I totally agree with that. And I think that's one of the things that people have to understand is that there may be many therapists who do the same thing that you do. There are a lot of clients out there. Now, I know that that's going to vary somewhat by some locations. I realize that in some locations there's a lot more competition for clients. But I think in those situations it's a matter of if I do have competition, if there are a lot of other therapists doing the same thing that I am, and I'm not getting the number of referrals that I want, then maybe I have to tweak what I'm doing or how I'm doing it or how I market what I'm doing. There's always a way that you can tweak these things.
Mm-hmm. Oh, completely. And you said something interesting about, there's no one else out there like me. I always, I don't know who I was explaining this to the other day. Even if there is another anxiety therapist in my town, which of course there's tons, but there is nobody maybe that's my exact age or my gender, my personality, my training, my exact identity.
Right.
And a client that's looking for me wants me.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Somebody that's going to be searching for what I do is going to come to me. Or if somebody wants this anxiety therapist for that age or that personality or that training is going to go to that person. Mm-hmm. That's why there are enough. I mean, we are going to find our clients that want us and us specifically.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think as you're talking about that, the two things that come to mind for me are what is it that makes me unique? And something related to that are what is my particular strength that I can really capitalize on and that might draw clients to me. And something, so the uniqueness and the strength factors, I think, are ways that you can work in addition to this niche idea that we've been talking about here to really draw in more clients.
Completely. Yeah, so I think trying to get everybody else, though, in that same mindset that we're not in competition, have to keep everybody to ourselves, because that client might be best served with another therapist.
This is true.
And they could send me somebody that calls them that would be better served with me.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And I think, networking with other people in your community, learning about what makes them unique and their strengths. So in the event that you do need to make referrals, you know exactly who to refer to. So I think that plays a part of all this too.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Well, Amanda, if anybody wants to get a hold of you, a client wants to set up an appointment with you, therapist wants to pick your brain about worry, reframes, or anything about your practice, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'd say my website's probably the best way because it has my email, my phone number, and that is www.amandalcpc.com.
Okay. And you can be found on the different Facebook groups. You and I are on a lot of the same ones, and that's a good place to hang out, too. The Private Practice Journeys Facebook group in particular is a really good place to pick up a lot of this stuff. So I encourage listeners to check that out. Well, Amanda, thanks so much again for your time, and it's really interesting. We're getting toward the end of October here already of 2017, and not too much longer, and this podcast series will be done.
I know, it's almost been a year.
I know. It goes by fast, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, listen, thanks so much for talking to me again, Amanda.
Of course. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so what'd you think of that episode? Wasn't that good stuff? You know, the personal branding segment of this podcast I thought was very instructive. Amanda talked about being intentional about who she's trying to reach. What are her goals, and what's she trying to get out of her marketing and communication and service efforts. I think all those were important in terms of thinking about who you are as a business owner and private practitioner and how you want to brand yourself in your particular community. So good stuff. Well, listen, if you would like the show notes for today's podcast episode, including that link on how to get Amanda's Worry Reframes book, check out my website, chrisquarto.com, and just click on podcast, and you'll be able to find this podcast episode with the show notes and any other podcasts you'd like to listen to. I really appreciate you listening to this podcast episode and the series over this past year. And until next week, have a great rest of the week.